Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Anyone that's in the chat? Hello, hello. Long time no see, YouTube. It has been a minute. Wow. Yeah, I've been crazy busy the last couple months. I know it's been way too long. I should have definitely been streaming more. Sorry about that. Sorry it's been so long since I was uploading videos and streaming and doing the live chats. I know everybody a lot of people really enjoy the live chat, and so do I. So sorry it's been such a long hiatus. Things just got kind of crazy for me the last couple months, but I'm back. I'm going to try to make the live chats back, try to make them, as interactive as ever. So anyone that's hopping into the chat right now that has never been part of this, it has been a little while since I uploaded on YouTube. So I'm sure we might have some new people. Hey, Wound Up, what's up? We might have some new people coming over from Twitter that have followed me more recently and haven't done the live chats with me before. Basically, the way this works, you drop whatever you want to talk about into the chat. Any questions that you want to talk about, it doesn't matter. Anything. It can be about, games that you want to play, what you're liking. It can be about sales. Of course, sales is my main thing. So that's probably going to be the main focus. But whatever you want to talk about with games, that's what we're here to do. We're here to have chat, interact with each other, and see what's going on. So any questions that you have, any topics you want to talk about, feel free to start dropping them in the chat. A lot has happened since I've been gone. A lot. So we've got a bunch to talk about. All right, let's look here. We got Ace Evil, morning or noon, depending on the state you're in. It is early afternoon for me. Early afternoon, but thank you. Eric, happy holidays. I hope Santa was kind. Hope happy holidays to you too, Eric. I had a great Christmas. It was my daughter's second Christmas technically, but she's only, like a year and a half old. So this was the first one where we could kind of actually do a little bit of something with her and have her interact a little bit. Her first Christmas, she was only a few months old, so she was not fully aware at all of what was going on. So it was a good time. It was a lot of fun. Ace Evil from Americans had embraced Boxing Day. Happy Boxing Day weekend as well. I think some people might celebrate that. I'm not entirely sure. Wound Up saying Benji's back. It's good to see you again, Wound Up. It's been too long. Ryan Toll, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Empty and Full, Revenge of Benji. Hello. Welcome back. Zedark, hope you're having a nice holiday. All right. It's good to see you all again, too. It's been too long. Sorry about that. Let's dive into some topics. Let's get some questions. Let's get some game chat sales. Let's get going. So anything you want to talk about, drop them. Wound Up, I have a question. What's your opinion of the pricing of next-gen consoles? Great question. So the last time I had talked about this on YouTube, it had been a while. It had been months ago. So since then, we've had the Xbox Series X announced, right? It's official. We have a lot better idea of what's going on with it, what's in the box. We know a lot more than we did last time we talked about this. So it's interesting. Whereas PS5 is still much more of an unknown, right? We know a little bit. We know what was given in the Wired articles, right, that Sony has put out there. There's rumors all over the place. One day it seems like the PlayStation 5 is going to be this, 13 teraflop monster. The next day, I know today a lot of people are getting wound up thinking it might be 9 teraflops. Who knows? So the PS5 is a little bit harder to guess on. Xbox, though, we have a much clearer picture, at least in terms of the Series X. So to me, at least the tech that's in the box, what we know so far is it's double the performance of the Xbox One X, right? So that's the GPU power. It's double that. Still kind of unclear what kind of teraflops they're referring to, but basically a 12 teraflop machine. We know it's got, an SSD in it. We know it's got a jump in RAM. We know it's got a much, much, much better CPU. I think it's highly, almost impossible that the Series X is less than $500 now. After what we know about it, I think it's a lock, right, for at least $500. $600 seems like a stretch to me. I know I've seen some people saying, oh, is this going to be a $600 machine because the tech in it sounds so good. That to me would just be such a hard sell. I'd be surprised if Microsoft went that route. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but man, $600 on the market, that's a hard machine to sell, in my opinion. I think 500 they could easily get away with in terms of like consumers, being on board with it, especially since it's such a big jump in tech. So that's going to be my guess right now. I'm going to guess the Series X is 500. There's rumors of Lockhart, a weaker Xbox One, or not Xbox One, a new next-gen Scarlet machine, possibly in the works. My guess is if it's as weaker as what it's sounding, that might be like a $350 machine. Doesn't sound like 400. I don't think it's going to be $400. Maybe 350, somewhere around there. And as a total guess, based off the limited, stuff we know about the PlayStation 5, I'm going to also guess that's 500. They could go 400. It's entirely possible. The PS4 was super successful at that price point, but considering it's going to be using a really good CPU, a really good GPU, I'm sure, and good RAM and an SSD, I think it's also a $500 machine. So that's going to be my guess. Who knows if that's where it's going to fall between there, but my guess is Series X and PS5 both $500. All right. Ryan Tolu here. What do you expect from PS5 in Japan? Ooh, interesting question. In terms of success, man, that's a very interesting question and a bit of a hard one, right? Because PS4 has done okay in Japan, right? It hasn't been like this massive, monstrous success, hasn't been like this huge disappointment. It's just been, it's done okay. It's not the massive success that it is worldwide, for example, right? Globally, the PlayStation 4 is just this juggernaut. It's done amazing in Europe, amazing in the US, amazing in places like the Middle East. So globally, the PlayStation 4 has just been a monster. But in Japan, it's more just done okay. Switch, for example, is much, much more dominating the market there compared to like what the PlayStation 4 accomplished. So, PS5 is going to be interesting because at least from what we've heard, it seems the PS5 is more of an iterative console. Now that doesn't mean it's like, oh, this, the PS5 is boring or anything like that. It sounds like it's a better PS4, right? It's going to have the same focus on the core gamer. It's still going to be a very traditional console. It's going to be a powerful one, but it's, it's an ingrained typical console, just a next gen version of it. So honestly, as a guess, and this is just a guess, we're super early days here, but I'm expecting PS5 is probably going to perform around what PS4 did in Japan. It seems like we've kind of hit a bit of a ceiling, at least in the Japanese market, for these traditional type consoles, right? With PS3, now PS4. It's somewhat of a comparable range. I'm guessing PS5 is probably going to follow a similar suit, probably right around that PS4 type performance. I'd be surprised if it's like way above that, if it's out there performing like a Switch in Japan. I'm not going to anticipate something like that. So that's just my early guess. My early guess is PS4 probably is, or PS5 is probably a somewhat similar range to what the PlayStation 4 did. All right. Ruger. $599 is a cursed price. Yeah, that would be a huge gamble to go that high. I'd be surprised if Microsoft did it. I'd be surprised. It's really high to ask for your average consumer, especially, I know there's the argument of, this is day one, you have your more core consumers that are going out and buying in those first 6 months, right? These are like the hardcore gamers, right? This isn't the people, that are trying to get a cheap deal or something like that. The people that are buying the Series X in the first year, that's your core demographic. But all of that being said, it's still a huge price tag. So I don't think they'll go $599. That's just a huge gamble. My guess is 500. Can be Mandalorian above Rise of Skywalker. Agree or disagree? I'm going to agree with you, Ken. I enjoyed Rise of Skywalker. I know a lot of people didn't, right? It's getting very mixed just across the board, both from critics and from, it seems, fans and people seeing it. It's just mixed. I'm seeing everything. I'm seeing people say they hated Rise of Skywalker. I'm seeing people say they loved Rise of Skywalker. Personally, at least, I enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite Star Wars movie, but I thought it was a good overall ending. I enjoyed it, but I do agree with you. I think The Mandalorian's better. The Mandalorian is just awesome. I'm loving it. And the last episode that I saw, episode 7, it was my favorite episode so far of the whole season. I thought they did a great job building these storylines. No spoilers, so don't worry about spoilers if you haven't watched The Mandalorian. But I thought they did a good job of building those storylines together and having a culmination a bit in episode 7 with a big cliffhanger. So I'm enjoying Mandalorian a lot. I personally do think it's better than Rise of Skywalker, but I did like Rise of Skywalker. Carnage Ghost. Hello there, Benji. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing good, Carnage. I'm glad to be back. I'm really worried that next year E3 will be all about next-gen games, and PS4 support from third-party will drop fast, besides sports and Call of Duty games. What do you think? Good question, Carnage. So we are going into that transition phase, right? Next-gen's right around the corner. It's kind of crazy how close it is, right? It's a year away, and in some ways, a year sounds like a long time. But when you think about how fast the industry moves, how fast things change, a year is no time. We are on the doorstep of next generation. The next 6 to 12 months, it's just going to be a nonstop barrage of, next gen game announcements and news. But as for your question specifically about your worry for E3, I wouldn't be super worried. There's still going to definitely be cross-gen games, especially for the whole, first year or so. There's definitely going to be a lot of cross-gen games that are on both. I wouldn't be too worried, but there's definitely going to start being some next-gen exclusives. So that is one thing definitely to be aware of. Like Hellblade 2 is already one that's been announced. That's there's no indication that will be on the Xbox One in any way, shape, or form. At least from the announcement, they didn't even remotely hint that it was going to come to the Xbox One. They fully were just talking about, Xbox Series X. So, yeah, there's definitely going to be exclusives coming. That's if you're someone that's not going to jump in early, that might be a bit of a bummer seeing a lot of E3 focusing on these big new next-gen games. But you'll get more, I think, than just sports and just Call of Duty. I think at least for that first year, there will definitely still be some cross-gen games. After that, though, once you get like 2 years out into next-gen, I think you're going to have to upgrade. I think there's going to be very few games 2 years from now still being made, for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. All right. Here we go. We got a bunch dropped in. All right, let's get that. Ace Evil, $500 might really hurt an expanded market / Japan market. That's a great point. That's a very good point, especially as PlayStation 4 has done very good in some emerging markets that don't really get talked about a lot. One example is the Middle East. I've talked to some people, not super in-depth details, but I have talked to some people that have made PlayStation 4 exclusives, for example, that have talked to me a little bit about how well their games have performed in the Middle East, as well as, just some more general info that's kind of out there a little bit. But the Middle East is one that the PlayStation 4 has done really well in. I've heard that it's doing, pretty well in markets in Asia outside of Japan, that these growing markets, right? So that is a good point, Ace Evil. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, and if not, I'm sorry. But yeah, $500 might hurt it in those expanded markets. It's a very good point, and something to keep in mind. Ruger here. It seems like outside Nintendo games and a few select third-party games, Monster Hunter, Persona, Dragon Quest, Japanese console game sales will continue to decline. Well, Ruger, actually, this year was a great year for Japan, honestly. So Resident Evil 2 Remake did phenomenal. Devil May Cry 5 did very, very well. So I should say Capcom. This was a very good year for Capcom in general. But there's been others too. So Japan, Kingdom Hearts 3. Kingdom Hearts 3 was a huge success. So I get your point to a degree. I kind of see what you're saying. And there definitely was a time where Japanese games definitely seemed to be declining, but I think we're kind of past that. I think Unreal Engine 4 has helped a lot with Japanese HD game development. You've seen a lot of Japanese companies adopt Unreal Engine. It's done a bunch for them. So I think that's helped a lot. And then also for Capcom specifically, the RE engine seemed to have helped them a great deal in terms of, getting their games out at a decent pace with a high quality. So I do think we're on the uptick again. There was definitely a slide there, especially at the end of last gen and early this gen. The first few years, you saw companies like Capcom, that I just mentioned, really struggling. You saw even Square Enix hitting some bumps like the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy, and there was a rough patch there. But things do seem to be improving, in my opinion. All right. Ryan here. I think most people expected PS4 to cost $500 back in 2013, and the 400 price was a megaton back then. Would not be surprised to see something like that again. Yeah, I do remember 400 did surprise a lot of people, especially whenever they coupled not only the $400 price tag, but then they also bumped up the RAM from what we thought it was going to be, right? A lot of people don't remember, but leading into this gen, people thought there was going to be a lot less RAM from the rumors and actually even from dev kits, what Sony had communicated. And then they bumped that RAM up last minute announcement right when they did the reveal. And also, yeah, the price was cheaper than expected. So you never know. Could come in at 400, especially if these rumors floating around, just today. This could be complete BS. I don't know anything about it. But there are rumors it's more of like a 9 teraflop machine compared to like the Xbox's 12 teraflop. So if that's true, and again, that could be complete nothing. But it would indicate maybe the price could be a little bit less. The Arkham Knight Hero. Hello, Benji. Do you think Bluepoint Games, after all the praise they are giving to Sony, might get acquired by them? Interesting question. And do you think Sony will expand Insomniac and let Japan Studio make big game Bloodborne 2? So we got a series of questions here. And actually, I'm with you, Arkham Knight, on a lot of this. I'm on board with what you're asking here. So in terms of Bluepoint, we know them and Sony have a great relationship. Good relationship. They've worked together on numerous projects. Right whenever Sony first talked about the PlayStation 5, right when they're coming out in these Wired articles, what's one of the first things they talked about? That Bluepoint had a game in development for it, right? So Sony is very close to Bluepoint, clearly. I think if their PS5 game's a big success, total guess, right? But if their PS5 game comes out, it's a big success. It does really well for them. I think you might see Sony make the attempt. I don't know Bluepoint. I don't know anyone that works there. So I don't know what their feelings are about being acquired, because remember, it takes two, right? There is such thing as a hostile takeover, but very rarely does that go well. Very, very rarely is a hostile takeover going to be a good thing. You need both parties on board. And actually, Bluepoint might even be privately owned. So I don't even know if they can do a hostile takeover. So it would have to be, an agreed upon thing. And so I don't know Bluepoint. I don't know anyone there. So I don't know their thoughts on it. But at least from Sony's end, I would think that if their PS5 project does well, that is a very good target to look at. In terms of your other questions, do you think Sony's going to expand Insomniac? Yes. Just like you're seeing Microsoft not only buying new studios, but they are also expanding the studios that they already have. They're hiring up. Sony is doing the same thing. It's not getting as much attention, but companies like Guerrilla and others have been expanding the amount of developers actually in the studios. The studios themselves are also growing. Not only did they buy Insomniac, but they're building their teams larger. So I do expect that. I expect Insomniac to go bigger. And Japan Studio making Bloodborne 2, I think there's actually a high possibility of that. From seems really busy. They just did Sekiro. Before that, they did Dark Souls 3. Now they have Elden Ring on the table. There's just a lot going on for From Software right now. They're super busy making multiple games in a pretty quick order, right? When you think about Dark Souls 3, Sekiro, and now Elden Ring, when you think about the time scale you're talking, that's quite a few big games in a short amount of time. So they're super busy right now. And I don't know that Bloodborne 2 is necessarily a project that's going to get their full attention. I won't be surprised if you see From assist in a Bloodborne 2. But I don't think they might be. I don't think they maybe might not be the lead developer, right? Maybe Japan Studio takes that over and From more assists with the vision, the overall thing. But Japan Studio does the majority of the work. I could see that happening. I think a Bloodborne 2 makes a lot of sense. Bloodborne wasn't an enormous seller, but it also sold well. And man, you want to talk about a way to get consumers happy, right? You want to talk about a way to get Sony fans excited. Bloodborne would just be huge in that regard. So I think Bloodborne 2 will happen. And I do think that there's a strong chance that Japan Studio is the main dev team on that. Ken B, is Ring Fit Adventure still doing well in US? Seems they can't keep it in stock in Japan. So it's doing pretty good. It's doing okay, better than Labo, let's say. It's outperforming what Labo did, which is a good thing because Labo was a bit rough. But it's also not having the kinds of demand that it is in Japan, right? In Japan, you're seeing these constant sellouts. They literally cannot keep Ring Fit in stock. You're seeing it hold really well, but it's also not getting like huge boosts. It's not really going way down or way up because they're like just meeting demand with Ring Fit. They're only shipping pretty much as is being bought. It's not the case in the US. It's very common to find Ring Fits not having like big shortages. You can go to almost any store and find it, but it is doing better than Labo, but it's not like necessarily the huge, massive success that it is in Japan. So doing well, I would say, but not like crazy. Seattle Dave. Hey, Dave, good to see you. Very good to see you. Love to hear any updates on Nintendo software and hardware sales for holiday. Thoughts on Switch Lite? Seems like it's sold, but not as well as N hoped. Good questions. Several good ones here, Dave, and definitely some stuff I'd like to talk about. So in terms of software, the two biggest winners for the holiday in the US and also from, European markets, from what I can see, of course, I'm way more versed in the US. That is my specialty. The US market is what I know best, but I'm also getting better, getting more contacts about learning about other markets as well. So from what I've seen in Europe, in the US, it's Pokemon and Luigi's Mansion 3. These are the biggest success stories of the holiday for Nintendo. Pokemon, kind of obvious, right? I think we all knew Pokemon was going to be massive. It's Pokemon, and it's the first new mainline Pokemon on Switch because Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu were a remake. So I don't think that's surprising. I think we all expected that. The surprise is Luigi's Mansion 3. It is doing phenomenal. I mean, spectacular. From everything I've seen, it is probably the second best-selling Nintendo game over the holiday, even over Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I believe. From what I'm seeing, it seems like it's even outperforming Mario Kart, which, as everyone knows, Mario Kart is this massive. Maybe with bundles, Mario Kart might be ahead, right? Because it had the November Black Friday bundle. But in terms of standalone unit sales, Luigi's Mansion 3 is just doing phenomenal for them. I think there's a strong chance Luigi's Mansion 3 becomes a 10 million unit seller. Very strong chance. And I'm expecting by the end of this year, by the end of 2019, Luigi's Mansion 3 may have shipped 5 to 6 million. It might already be there after what would really only be a few months because it came out at the end of October. So big, huge success story there for Nintendo. In terms of the Lite, I agree, Dave. It does seem that it is not performing as strong as many expected. That would be including myself. It's a $199 Switch. And I think that's what a lot of us went into it thinking, right? Look at how well the Switch is done. Now you can get a Switch for $199. This just makes perfect sense. But when you think about it, I think a lot of us were maybe a little too optimistic and forgot that the handheld dedicated market, it's still there, but it's just not as big as the dedicated console space. Not anymore. So I think some of us went in thinking too much of Switch Lite, like, hey, look at how strong Switch is done, and not enough like, hey, this is a handheld market device. Yes, it plays Switch games, but it is still a dedicated handheld. So Lite hasn't been a bomb. It's not one of those, kinds of scenarios where it's like, wow, Lite's just not selling. But definitely not the primary SKU. The standard Switch is still by far the majority leader of sales. So Lite, I will agree, is a little less than what I thought. I'm not sure Nintendo's expectations on it. But considering how readily available it still is in stock, the Lite, and you're seeing shortages pop up on the standard, maybe Nintendo themselves overestimated it a bit too and underestimated the regular Switch a bit. I think that might be the case. I think they thought Lite might be a bigger seller in the holiday than it's been, and the Switch, standard might have been a little less, but actually it was the reverse, right? All right. Mr. Mass, is it normal that also the newest PS4 Pro is pretty noisy? I'm not sure on that. The Pro that I have is the God of War edition, so it came out, quite a while ago. I got the limited edition God of War one. And it does get pretty loud. It gets pretty noisy. I don't know if the new Pros are like that or not, but I can tell you my Pro gets loud. Isma0612, what's up, Isma? For the biggest week of the year in Japan, 27 games of the top 30 were switched. That's pretty incredible, right? I mean, that's insane. Shows the big problem with PS4 in Japan, no evergreen. Ooh, very good point. Sony needs a killer app in Japan, but who can provide it? That's very interesting and a good point. Very good point. PlayStation just doesn't have those kinds of evergreens in that market as Nintendo. I mean, that's just flat out. If you look at a lot of those games, that you're mentioning, 27 of the top 30, a lot of them are games that came out quite a while back. You're talking about, games like Smash that came out a year ago. You're talking about games like, Mario Kart that came out, originally all the way back on the Wii U. Now, granted, this is a re-release with all the DLC and stuff, but it's an older title. Nintendo just has that market locked. Honestly, even in the US, very, very few companies can compete with Nintendo in terms of evergreens. You've got, of course, some like Grand Theft Auto 5, which just sells forever. You have Call of Duty that does well throughout the year until the next one comes, sports games. But Nintendo is really special. They're very special in that regard in terms of making games that people buy for years and years and years and years to come. So who could provide that for Sony? What studio? Man, that's tough, especially for Japan specifically, right? I actually think that's harder than providing an evergreen for the West. I think, like a big shooter, if they had some type of really big, good shooter, which I believe that's what Guerrilla Games is working on besides Horizon Zero Dawn 2. I believe they also have a big shooter in development. I could see something more evergreen coming for the West, but Japan would be hard. That would be a tough one. Bahamut 1010, do you believe demos really hurt sales? Asking this regarding the leaked Final Fantasy VII demo. So there's a lot of debate on this, not just with fans, but people in the industry. I've seen people from all over the board with different opinions on this. I've seen devs feel one way. I've seen journalists feel one way. I've seen, just regular people, regular consumers split on this. Tough to say. Demos, to me, I haven't seen a lot of evidence they really help sales most of the time. I generally, I don't think they do a lot to actually move units. But I also haven't seen a ton of evidence that as long as the demo's good, that it really hurts units either. So I'm kind of just, I don't have a strong opinion on demos, to be honest. Now, if it's a bad demo, especially a bad beta for an online game, I'm talking about Fallout 76 here for prime example, that can very much hurt. Fallout 76 in the lead up to that game, while people were a little worried about how it might be, there was also a lot of excitement, and some of the early pre-order stuff I was seeing looked pretty strong. And then that beta hit, and wow, did it affect that game? Wow, did it really affect the launch of that game? So I would say a bad demo or a bad beta absolutely can harm sales. Good one, I don't see a lot of evidence it really helps. Maybe a little bit, but not like a huge amount. So, I'm kind of, for consumers, I think it's a great thing. In terms of, what's good for me, what's good for you, I think it's a good thing to have that demo available so you can make a bit more of an educated decision before you buy it, so you can try the game. But in terms of sales specifically, I'm kind of indifferent on it. All right, Elias, honest answer, please. Okay. Do you think, oh, sorry, my phone's ringing. Let me put that on silent. Honest answer. Do you think Xbox in the next gen will have games at the level of God of War, the new one, The Last of Us, Bloodborne, Horizon Zero Dawn, games of that high level? Good question. I know that Microsoft wants it. Tough to say. I thought, Gears 5 this year was underrated. I don't think it was as good as some of the ones you're mentioning, God of War, The Last of Us. I would still put those games above Gears 5, but personally, at least the campaign, I really enjoyed Gears 5. I thought that was a step in the right direction for them. And I know they're working hard. I know they're hiring a lot. It's not just the buying studios. A lot of people are focused on that. Oh, Microsoft's going out and buying these studios. They're also really staffing up teams that already exist. Turn 10, Playground, companies like this, they're also really building those staffs. So they're working hard on it. So I've heard a tiny little bit of things floating around about, their new studio that they're building from the ground up. The initiative. I've heard that's one of the focuses of the initiative. Not necessarily that they're coming out there and saying, hey, you need to be a Naughty Dog. I'm not saying anything like that, but that they have high expectations. If you look at who the initiative's been hiring, we're talking it's elite people from across the industry. So it's tough to say until we see those games, Elias, until we see if they can hit that bar. I do think it will be a much better next gen for Microsoft than this gen in terms of exclusive output. I expect a big improvement, big improvement. This gen hasn't been the greatest, right, for Microsoft exclusives. I think the 360 era was much better than the Xbox One era in terms of their first party output. So I do expect to see an improvement next gen, but I don't know if we'll hit that level of the big Naughty Dog type games or Sony Santa Monica. Tough to say. I'm not sure. Sam Walton, something is strange about these latest PS5 leaks. It's not matching up with what Cerny and other executive comments. Yeah, I can't talk too much about it because I'm not super into the rumor mill anymore on next gen. I used to be diving in, trying to find out as much as I possibly could about next gen. And then I kind of just got out of it. There was just so much fake stuff, first of all, floating around, just mixed everything. Just 1 minute it's this, 1 minute it's that. So I kind of got out of that game. But from what I heard back then, this was back whenever I was really trying to find out what was going on. A 9 teraflop console doesn't line up with what I was hearing, but I don't know. I can't speak to that being the truth, but Sam, I do agree. It doesn't sound quite right. Something about it sounds off. Ruger, I meant Japanese game sales. Oh, in the Japanese market, not their international sales. Okay, Ruger. Yes. I see what you're saying now. Good point. I'd agree with you on that one, Ruger. Yeah, Japan seems to be not the strongest market in the world anymore, right? I mean, it never was or at least not for a long time, number one. The United States has been the most powerful market in terms of purchasing power for a long time. But yeah, Japan, it's a bit of an interesting road over there. Also, weirdly, Western games are seeing growth in Japan. Still not huge like the Dragon Quests and the Final Fantasies. It's still not up there with the biggest Japanese games, but you are seeing some of these Western titles, Days Gone, for example, Spider-Man, for example, Call of Duty this gen has done very well. You have seen some Western games start to gain some traction in the Japanese market, so it's definitely an interesting place. Ace Evil, I think Switch Lite complements the Switch, but really Switch Normal is the superstar. Exactly. That's the exact way I would phrase it. I haven't seen any evidence that Lite is taking away sales from Switch, from the standard model, that people are foregoing getting the standard so they can get the Lite. I have seen zero evidence of that. And in fact, I believe Nintendo themselves actually recently came out and said the same thing. Lite just seems to be adding to the market, just seems to be adding to the market share. The question is just, is it adding as much as Nintendo expected? That's a bit of a harder conundrum to figure out. And I'm not so sure it has, but it's done okay. It's done all right. I would phrase it that way. G Mace 001, PS4 Pro is disappointing with noise. It's very loud. I agree, it's very loud. The next PS needs to have a fan noise solution. My X is very quiet aside from some coil whine. I do agree with that, G Mace. The one issue with the Pro certainly is that bad boy gets loud. It gets so loud. Not every game, but there are definitely games I've played on it where that thing sounds like a jet engine taking off, and the X is very quiet. So I agree with you on that. I hope PS5 has a better cooling solution so it doesn't get quite as noisy. I'm not like a huge stickler for that. Like, oh man, the noise drives me crazy. A lot of times I'm wearing headphones when I game, but it does get loud, real loud. What time is it? How long have we been going? 34 minutes. I'll probably go for like another 10, do like 45-minute chat. Sound good? Thanks everyone for showing up, by the way. I'm going to take just a second away from the questions for 1 second and just say thanks for coming back. I know it's been a while since I hit up YouTube and did the live chats. I missed them. Thanks everyone for showing back up. All right, back to the questions, right? The real reason we're here. All right. Fisher Net, big fan of your work. Thank you so much. Keep it up, and please do more videos if you can. Yeah, I'm gonna try. I'm sorry about that. Your general positivity is a nice thing to have and hear. Those are incredibly kind words, Fisher Net. It means the world to me, honestly. I mean, seriously. I'm not just saying that. I know sometimes those kind of things can come across as disingenuous or something like that. Like someone's just saying that to make you feel good. Like, oh, hey, thanks, man. But no, seriously, I do appreciate that. It means a lot to me. I'm going to try to get back to YouTube and do the videos more regularly again. It's been too long. I took too long of a break. So sorry about that. GMace001, is Days Gone the biggest sales versus reviews difference this year? I loved the game, but it reviewed poorly from GameSpot and IGN. Seems word of mouth really helped sell it. It's definitely one of them, GMace. Absolutely, it's one of them. So that game has sold well. Sony has refused to talk about it. I can just tell you, I literally can tell you, Days Gone has sold well. Not a theory. I know for a fact it has. So it's done very, very well. Sony just seems to not be in the PR business anymore, really, for sales, unless it's like a record. You know, I've talked about that before, but again, let's look at Death Stranding. That Death Stranding's been out for, over a month now, and there's not even, any word about its sales. Days Gone, this whole year, they have said nothing about its sales. So Sony seems to be in the position, at least their thinking is they really want to talk about records. They want to talk about massive performances, huge, crazy breakouts, and not much else, which is unfortunate, but that's the stance they've taken. But yeah, I would say it's definitely up there for biggest reviews versus sales difference. I'm trying to think if there was a few other ones. That's definitely up there. It's definitely one of. Super Peach Boy, updates on, we just talked about this. Updates on Death Stranding sales. Do you think Kojima Productions will be acquired by Sony? All right, let's talk about Death Stranding. Death Stranding had a good launch, right? When it very first came out, those first week or 2 weeks were strong, but the game has been very front-loaded. Legs have not been great. They haven't been good. It's a very, very front-loaded game. It is still selling. I'm not trying to say all of a sudden it's selling 0 units, but it was, out of what I can see, it might be the most front-loaded of the major PlayStation exclusives this gen. If you look at games like Horizon Zero Dawn, if you look at games like, Uncharted 4, God of War, even back to The Last of Us, a lot of games, they've actually been pretty laggy for Sony this gen. They've improved, I believe, in that regard of their games lagging for longer. Death Stranding was very front-loaded, very front-loaded. So I'm curious to see long-term, how that plays out. Because launch was good, legs are not great. And whether Kojima will be acquired, I don't think so. I don't think yet, at least. Let's see what his second game does. A lot of rumors floating around. It might be a horror game. We know he's already tweeted about that. He's already starting working on it. Like he himself is already in the planning stages of his next game. Let's see how that does. I don't think Sony's going to rush in and acquire yet. Let's see what happens with his second game. The Arkham Knight Hero. I feel like Square Enix deal with Marvel will fall apart as soon as Avengers drops. So far, they seem they aren't confident with the game. They barely market it, and taking ages to polish seems rushed. Avengers does feel weird, right? I don't want to cast any super critical judgment yet, just because who knows? We've seen scenarios before where games kind of looked questionable up to release, and then they've blown our socks off. But I'm with you, Arkham Knight, in terms of it does feel weird. Avengers' whole marketing feels weird for a game like the size and scope of Avengers. Think about how big Spider-Man PS4 was. enormous. That was one hero on one platform. Avengers is multi-platform. It has that Avengers branding on it. It has, Tony Stark, and it's got Captain America. This should be a juggernaut in sales. It should be, theoretically. But I agree with you. Something about the game does just feel a little off. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. But yeah, let's keep a close eye on that. Andrew Lee, do you think Sony will acquire Bluepoint? Thanks for the question, Andrew. I talked about this earlier. Let's see how their PS5 game does. I think there's interest there, at least from Sony's side. Let's see how this big PS5 project goes. My guess is if it's a big hit, if they come out and Bluepoint rocks it out of the park and that game's just this massive sales success, I think you might see Sony dive in and try and ensure, because right now they do a lot of exclusive work for Sony, but they are not owned by them. They could go and work for whoever they want. Right now, they've got a pretty good relationship going. They're working with Sony. Everything seems nice. But there is always the opportunity that they could work with someone else. So if their PS5 game's a huge hit, I do think you see Sony make that attempt. Eric, word of mouth is huge. Reviews for Control, Days Gone, Death Stranding were all mixed. For myself, I thought Control was very rewarding. Good taste, Eric. Control rocks. The deeper I went into the lore, the more I took from it. I'm with you, Eric. Yeah, word of mouth's big. Word of mouth's big. Personally, I think reviews, and this isn't to cast shade on anyone, because I have friends in the media. I do feel that reviews are becoming less important. Honestly, I just feel like they are, especially in an age with things like Game Pass and with things like so many people online on Twitter and on YouTube, like we're on right now. It's so easy to get so many opinions. I think critic reviews are slightly less. I'm not sitting here trying to say, oh, they have no merit, they have no worth. I don't think that at all. I do think that they're worth having, but I do think hardcore critic reviews are probably a bit less important than they were, let's say, 10 years ago. I think more and more people are looking to places like Twitter or YouTubers that they enjoy, and they're getting more opinions from places like that. I think that's kind of become a bigger thing for sales, that kind of word of mouth than critic reviews. Carnage, he answered the question. Okay. Bahamut, Marvel's deal with Square is fine. I bet Avengers will be one of the best games next year. It could be Bahamut. I'm not trying to say it's going to not be a huge hit. It could be massive. But I just do agree with the earlier question or statement from Markham that the lead up, the build up feels weird. It does feel a little strange, the marketing on that game. Isma, do you agree with Falcom's CEO claim that the JRPG audience is currently shifting to Switch in the US? I am seeing some evidence in Europe looking at multiplats, but I wonder whether it's the same in the US. There's definitely, I don't know if I would say shift is the right word, but I will say that Switch has a very, very strong and enthusiastic JRPG market. So I wouldn't say shift, because Final Fantasy 15, for example, just hit almost 9 million. Kingdom Hearts, which just came out this year, Kingdom Hearts 3 was an enormous success on PlayStation and Xbox. So I wouldn't say shift, like it's all moving towards the Switch is the right way to phrase it. But I will say that there's a very, very enthusiastic JRPG market on the Switch. So I do think it is, if you're making a JRPG and you can port it, right? If you can get a Switch version up and running, I definitely think you should. Like for Dragon Quest, for example, we saw that, right? Came out on PS4, but they also got that Switch version out there. I think it's important. I definitely would, because there's a big JRPG Switch audience. DMV Fan. Responding to Bahamut here. Just talking about Marvel. Good to see a DMV fan, by the way. Fintendo. Hi, Benji. I am too young to have a Twitter account. Oh, hi. Hey, Fintendo. But I have lurked in senior analysis and have started to get into the bubble and have an interest in being an analyst. That is awesome, Fintendo. That is the coolest thing I've ever heard. I love when people tell me things like that. I get, sometimes. Let me get a drink really quick. Sorry, I've been talking for like 45 minutes straight, so my voice is getting a little cracky. Literally one of the best things I hear. You want to know one of the things that makes me the happiest isn't necessarily when someone DMs me or writes a comment on Twitter and tells me, "Hey man, you're awesome," and all these kinds of things. That's cool. That's nice. I appreciate it for sure. I really, truly do. But one of the things that makes me the happiest is when someone tells me, "Hey, I wasn't really interested in sales until I started following your stuff, and you made sales interesting." It's one thing I get a lot is that, I don't think I'm the best analyst out there. I think there's ones that are better than me. But I do think one thing I am good at is I try my best to make sales digestible, right? To make it not just a wall of numbers, because that can get boring. Even for me, I love sales. And sometimes if I'm sitting there staring at a financial report and it's just a wall of numbers and money, it's like, okay, but what's interesting here? What can we pull out that's interesting to talk about, right? What's a way of phrasing this that actually makes it interesting? And that's what I try to do, right? That's my number one focus. Isn't necessarily being the best analyst. I try to be a good one, but I try to make sales interesting and engaging. And I appreciate Fintendo, you saying that that's helped you get interest in becoming an analyst. That's awesome. Thank you truly. Avraj Pada here. What are your thoughts? And by the way, sorry if I butcher anyone's names. It's tough sometimes. What are your thoughts on the current metrics of the Series X reveal? Based on interviews, it does seem Microsoft wants to sell more consoles this gen rather they don't care narrative. Okay, so here's one thing I can talk about because he posted it publicly on my timeline. Aaron Greenberg has told me, and this is all on my timeline, so I'm not sitting here delving insider info. He posted it. He retweeted it. That Microsoft's seeing record metrics for the Xbox Series X announcement. That's straight from Aaron Greenberg, straight from him, that they are seeing record metrics. And I kind of believe that, to be honest with you. The Game Awards is a massive, massive way to reveal it. It does huge numbers. I mean, Keighley has turned that thing. Jeff Keighley has turned the Game Awards into a monster. So first of all, you had all those views right off the bat. A lot of people are just looking at the YouTube views or things like that for the trailer afterwards. But you also have to remember millions of people saw that reveal right off the bat, right during the awards announcement. Millions of people saw those trailers. So Series X looks good. I'll say that. The metrics look good. From what Aaron has said on my Twitter, he's saying they're seeing record metrics. I do think it's doing well for them. Personally, I think Microsoft will do better next gen than they did with the Xbox One gen. Don't know if they'll hit 360 type performances, but I do think it'll be better than what they did with the Xbox One. All right, I'm going to answer these questions that are here, and then I'm going to bounce out. All right, so the ones that are left, I'll answer those, and then I'm going to dive out. All right, Super Peach Boy. Thank you so much for your answer. I absolutely look forward to each and every tweet of yours. Thank you so much. Sending you positive vibes from India. Awesome, Peach Boy. Positive vibes from the U.S. to you over in India. I hope all is well. Also, I know it's been a while, but did Just Cause 4 sell according to Square Enix's expectations? That's a tough one. I haven't delved a lot into Just Cause 4. Let me look into that a little bit, try and see what I can find out about what that game sold. Because like you said, it's been a while and it hasn't popped up on a lot of charts and stuff recently. So I haven't seen an updated number on that game, that particular game, in quite a while. So I would have to do a little bit of digging on that to find out. I know it got put on Game Pass, so that probably helped things because those deals aren't free. So Square Enix definitely got some money out of that scenario. So let me delve into it a little bit. Bahamut, I think games like Anthem and Fallout 76 indirectly help Marvel's Avengers. Has less competition because games like Anthem and Fallout 76 seem to have kind of fell off. DMV, a good marketing campaign, game reviews, unless the game reviews in the less than 60s or 90s or greater. Boom. I think you nailed it, DMV. If you're in those 70s or 80s range, are the reviews really swaying people that much either way? If it's in the 70s or 80s, probably not. It looks like a solid game. 90 plus, that's a big one, especially, it might sound like a small difference. Well, 91 and a 95, what's the difference? Big. If you can hit like 94, 95, that means basically across the board, you're getting like 10s everywhere. So something like that, that's the kind of reviews that do have an impact. Those really high or really low ones. Elias Stapleton, Benji-Sales, if Switch is dominating Japan market and PlayStation is doing okay, what do you think of Xbox? Is it dead or something like that? Elias, yeah, Xbox has almost no presence in Japan, almost none. You know, it sells like a couple hundred units or so a week, you know, varies, but it's very low. You know, Microsoft just does not have a presence there in that market at all. Bahamut, there's no Xbox market in Japan aside Minecraft exactly. DMV Fan, good to see you. Elias, keep doing the amazing live stream. Thank you, everyone. That is going to do it for this live chat. It was amazing to be back. Sorry about the long break. It was awesome to be back. It was good to see everyone again. I'm going to do these more often again. Sorry, I just got crazy busy. Stuff got wild for a while and I fell off, but I will be back doing YouTube videos regularly again. Probably once a week is what I'm going to try and do. Make a live stream, live chat once a week. And it's good to see everyone. Hope you all had an amazing holiday. 2020 is right around the corner, which means next gen's almost here. And I will see you all on Twitter or on YouTube the next time. See ya, everyone.